Have you ever found yourself stuck in a loop of thoughts, thinking too much about someone or something? Does your mind replay conversations, events, or worries over and over again, making it hard to focus on the present moment? How often do you find yourself consumed by what others think about you, or by the constant need to please everyone? These everyday struggles can leave us feeling overwhelmed and mentally exhausted. Let's take an example. Imagine you're walking down the street, and you notice a friend looking at you in a certain way. Instantly, your mind starts to wonder, what did I do wrong? Why are they looking at me like that? What if they don't like me? This moment, so small in reality, becomes a big deal in your mind. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be that way. What if we could let go of all these thoughts and simply be at peace with ourselves? Welcome to Wisdom Woven, where today, we explore how to break free from overthinking and the stress of worrying about others. In this video, we will dive into powerful insights inspired by Buddhist wisdom that can help you stop thinking too much about anyone and start living a peaceful, fulfilled life. If you enjoy what you hear, please show your support. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribes. So, don't miss out. Join our community today and stay connected to transformative content that can change your life. As we get into this, think about this simple question. Why do we often overthink? What is it that keeps us trapped in our thoughts, especially about others? Stay with us as we explore these important questions and begin unraveling the secrets of peace and mental clarity. The roots of overthinking in human nature. Overthinking. It's something that we all experience, no matter who we are or where we come from. It's that constant, uninvited guest in our minds that keeps us distracted from the present. You might have noticed how your mind constantly chases after thoughts, going from one thing to another. One moment you're thinking about a conversation you had, the next moment you're worried about an event that's weeks away. And, most often, it's about people. What they think of you, whether you said the right thing, or if you're making a good impression. Why does this happen? Why do we let our minds run wild with these thoughts, even when they do us no good? At the heart of it, overthinking stems from something deeply ingrained in our nature. Fear. It's an instinctual response that has been with humans for centuries. From a survival perspective, overthinking helped our ancestors make sense of threats, avoid danger, and stay alert. But in the modern world, this same tendency to overanalyze situations, especially in social contexts, doesn't serve us in the same way. Instead of keeping us safe, it keeps us trapped in a cycle of worry and doubt. This tendency to overthink often begins in childhood. We're taught to think critically, analyze our actions, and seek validation from others. As we grow, this pattern becomes so automatic that we hardly notice it. But the truth is, all this thinking takes a toll on us. It drains our energy, affects our mental health, and makes us more vulnerable to stress. When we are constantly caught up in thoughts about others, what they might think of us or how they might judge us, we lose sight of who we truly are. At this point, you might wonder, why is it that we care so much about what others think? The answer lies in our desire for connection and acceptance. As social beings, humans have always been inclined to seek approval and validation from those around them. The need for belonging is so strong that we sometimes start to define ourselves based on the opinions of others. We look for signs of approval in the form of compliments, gestures, or even silence. When we don't get those signals, our minds begin to fill in the gaps with worries and doubts. But here's where things start to change. Overthinking doesn't help us connect better with others. In fact, it can drive us further apart from the people we care about. The more we obsess over what others think of us, the more we lose sight of the relationship itself. We start to worry if we said the wrong thing, if we looked awkward, or if we were not good enough. The truth is, these thoughts only create distance, both from others and from ourselves. One of the most important things to remember is that people are not always thinking about us as much as we think they are. In fact, they are likely caught up in their own thoughts, worries, and lives. When we constantly overthink our interactions with others, we forget that they, too, are dealing with their own inner struggles. This mutual preoccupation with self often leads to misunderstandings and unnecessary tensions. It's a cycle that can be hard to break, But breaking it begins with realizing that not everything revolves around us, and we don't need to figure out what others are thinking all the time. Let's look at how this works in everyday life. Imagine you're at a party, and you meet someone new. You have a nice conversation, but after that, you start to replay the interaction over and over in your mind. Did I say the right thing? Did they like me? What if I said something weird? These are the thoughts that come flooding in, making you question every little thing you said or did. But here's the truth. The other person probably isn't even thinking about the conversation anymore. They are moving on with their life, just as you will soon do. But in that moment, you get stuck. You start building these mental stories, creating scenarios that might never happen. This is how overthinking grows. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill, picking up more and more unnecessary thoughts. You start to convince yourself that something is wrong when, in reality, there's nothing to worry about. It's just your mind, trapped in the past, unable to let go of the present moment. And all this happens because we care too much about what others think, even when it doesn't serve us. So, what's the solution to this cycle of overthinking? It starts with understanding that this habit of overanalyzing is rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But the more we feed these fears, the more they grow. In Buddhism, there's a powerful teaching about the nature of fear and attachment. Fear arises when we cling to our ideas of how things should be or how we think others should perceive us. The more tightly we hold onto these thoughts, the more power they have over us. But here's the key. When we learn to let go of these attachments, when we stop clinging to the idea of how others should treat us or think of us, we can begin to free ourselves from the cycle of overthinking. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. When we let go of our need for constant validation, we find peace. We don't need to figure out what others are thinking or analyzing every word or action. We simply let things be. Now, this doesn't mean we should stop caring about others altogether. It's not about becoming indifferent or apathetic. Instead, it's about finding a balance. It's about understanding that while we can care for others, we don't need to live our lives based on their opinions. We don't need to constantly seek validation or approval. When we let go of the need to control how others see us, we open ourselves to a more authentic and peaceful existence. This is the path to freedom from overthinking. The next time you catch yourself spiraling into thoughts about someone else's opinion, pause and ask yourself, is this thought helping me in any way? Am I gaining anything by overanalyzing this situation? More often than not, the answer will be no. And that's when you can choose to let go, to focus on the present moment, and to stop feeding the cycle of overthinking. It's a practice that takes time, but with patience and awareness, you can learn to quiet the noise in your mind and live with greater peace. In the end, the key to breaking free from overthinking is understanding that our minds are not always the best judges of reality. Our thoughts are often clouded by fear, insecurity, and attachment. But by recognizing this, we can take a step back and allow ourselves the freedom to live in the moment without being controlled by thoughts of what others might think. Buddhist teachings on non-attachment. In our everyday lives, it is very easy to get attached to things, people, and situations. Whether it's our expectations of others, the desire for approval, or even material possessions, we often hold onto these things as though they define who we are. But what if I told you that everything we cling to in this world is, in the end, fleeting? Nothing lasts forever. People, situations, emotions, and even our own thoughts. Buddhist teachings have long emphasized the importance of letting go of attachments, showing us a path to freedom, peace, and inner clarity. The Buddhist concept of non-attachment is simple, yet profound. It's not about rejecting the world or the people around us, nor is it about becoming cold or indifferent. Instead, it's about realizing that we do not need to rely on anything external for our happiness, security, or self-worth. Happiness comes from within, from being at peace with ourselves. Let's take a moment to think about it. How often do we depend on the approval of others to feel good about ourselves? How many times have we changed our actions, our thoughts, or even our beliefs to fit in or gain someone's favor? This attachment to external validation keeps us stuck in a cycle of constant worry and self-doubt. But Buddhism teaches us that true peace comes when we stop seeking approval from the outside world and begin to cultivate a sense of self-contentment. The Buddha himself said, "You only lose what you cling to." This powerful statement teaches us that our attachments are the root cause of suffering. When we hold tightly to something or someone, we create a sense of fear. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of uncertainty. And this fear is what causes pain in our hearts. The moment we let go of these attachments, we free ourselves from the chains of anxiety and stress. To understand non-attachment, let's explore the Buddhist concept of impermanence, or anicca. Impermanence teaches us that everything in life is constantly changing. Our bodies change, our emotions change, and even the world around us is always in flux. The person you are today is not the same person you were yesterday, and you won't be the same tomorrow. When we understand that change is the only constant, we start to realize that holding on to things too tightly is unnecessary. If everything is temporary, why should we allow ourselves to become attached to something that won't last? This realization doesn't mean we stop caring about people, experiences, or things. It simply means we stop clinging to them. We start to appreciate and enjoy the present moment, knowing that nothing is permanent. The people we love, the experiences we cherish, and even the successes we achieve, all of them will come and go. So, instead of trying to hold on, we learn to embrace the beauty of each moment without fear of what might come next. Non-attachment also extends to our thoughts and emotions. How many times have you found yourself overwhelmed by your own feelings? One moment, you might feel joyful and excited, and the next, you could be angry, sad, or anxious. These emotions come and go, but when we identify with them too strongly, they begin to control us. Buddhism teaches us to observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment, to simply notice them as they arise and pass away. Just like clouds in the sky, our feelings are temporary. By learning to detach from them, we stop letting them dictate our lives. One of the most powerful practices in Buddhism to cultivate non-attachment is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the act of being present in the moment, fully aware of what's happening without judgment or attachment. When you practice mindfulness, you stop getting lost in your thoughts about the past or the future. You start to live in the here and now, accepting whatever comes without resistance. Consider this. How often do we allow ourselves to get caught up in the what-ifs of life? What if I fail? What if they don't like me? What if something goes wrong? These thoughts create an unnecessary burden, preventing us from enjoying the present moment. Mindfulness teaches us to let go of these fears and anxieties. It's not about suppressing your emotions or thoughts, but simply noticing them without getting swept away by them. Buddhism also encourages us to practice equanimity, which is a balanced mental state that remains unaffected by joy, sorrow, or any extreme emotions. In the face of challenges, equanimity allows us to stay grounded and at peace. When we are attached to outcomes, we can become easily shaken by any setback or disappointment. But when we cultivate equanimity, we are able to face life's highs and lows with the same calm acceptance. You might wonder, what does this look like in real life? Imagine a situation where someone says something hurtful to you. In that moment, your emotions might surge: anger, frustration, sadness. But if you practice non-attachment, you will notice these feelings as they arise. You'll recognize that they are temporary and don't define you. Instead of holding on to the hurt, you let it pass. You don't allow the situation to control your emotions or dictate your response. You remain centered, unaffected by the external circumstances. This is the power of non-attachment. It's not about avoiding emotions or experiences, but rather, it's about living with a sense of freedom and peace, knowing that nothing is permanent. In the words of the Buddha, let go or be dragged. Holding on to attachments can weigh us down, but when we learn to release them, we float freely on the river of life without resistance. Now, I understand that this isn't always easy. We all have attachments, to people, to things, to outcomes. But the practice of non-attachment is not about perfection. It's about progress. Every day, we have the opportunity to loosen our grip, to let go a little more, and to embrace the present with open arms. The more we practice, the more peaceful and content we become. In the end, non-attachment is not about detaching from life, but rather from the unnecessary burden of overthinking, expectations, and fear of loss. It's about finding joy in the moment without clinging to it. When we stop attaching ourselves to everything that comes our way, we open ourselves up to a life of true freedom, a life where we are no longer bound by fear or anxiety, but guided by peace, compassion, and understanding. The impact of excessive thinking on mental peace. Let's imagine your mind is like a calm, clear lake. On the surface, everything is still. The water reflects the sky perfectly. But then, a thought appears, like a small stone thrown into the water. At first, the ripples are small, barely noticeable. But what happens when you throw another stone, and another? The lake starts to shake, and soon, the once peaceful surface is covered with waves, making it hard to see clearly. Your thoughts, just like those stones, cause disturbances. The more you think, the more the peace of your mind is disturbed. In our daily lives, we tend to overthink, often without realizing the damage it does to our inner peace. When we overanalyze every little thing, when we replay situations in our heads, it's like we are constantly throwing stones into the lake of our mind. The simple act of thinking becomes a storm, clouding our judgment, our emotions, and our peace. Overthinking affects us in several ways. It robs us of the present moment. How often do we miss out on what's happening right in front of us because we're too busy thinking about the past or worrying about the future? We can't change the past, and the future is never guaranteed. Yet, we allow our minds to wander in these spaces, stealing our time and energy. And with each passing day, the lake of our mind grows more turbulent, harder to navigate. The Buddhist teachings remind us of something simple yet powerful: the importance of being in the present moment. When we dwell on the past, we carry its weight with us. When we worry about the future, we burden ourselves with uncertainty. Both are distractions from the only real time we have, now. The teachings of mindfulness show us how to stop the flow of endless thoughts and bring our awareness back to the present. But how does this excessive thinking manifest in real life? Have you ever caught yourself replaying a conversation, worrying about something someone said, or doubting your actions long after they've happened? Maybe you spent the whole night thinking about something you said to a friend, analyzing how they might have felt. Perhaps you've stayed awake wondering if you've made the right choices in life. These are common examples of overthinking. We replay situations because we want answers or closure. Yet, in doing so, we only create more confusion and anxiety. When you find yourself overthinking, remember this: your mind is like a wild horse. It runs off in many directions, pulling you along with it. If you try to hold onto the reins too tightly, you'll tire yourself out. Instead, you need to guide the horse gently. Allow your thoughts to come, but don't let them control you. Watch them like clouds in the sky, passing by without attaching any importance to them. Excessive thinking leads to mental exhaustion. Imagine trying to carry too many heavy bags. Eventually, you'll get tired and worn out. Similarly, carrying the weight of endless thoughts leads to stress, anxiety, and emotional burnout. When your mind is full of unnecessary worries, you can't hear your true self. You can't connect with the peaceful part of you that exists beyond all the noise. The constant chatter of the mind prevents you from experiencing the calmness that lies underneath. In Buddhist practice, one of the ways to combat this overthinking is through mindfulness and meditation. These practices teach you to observe your thoughts without judgment. When you sit quietly and simply observe, you can begin to understand that you are not your thoughts. Your true self is the one who is watching, the one who is aware of the thoughts. Once you realize this, you can start to detach yourself from the storm of thoughts and find the peace that lies beyond. Overthinking also affects our emotional state. The more we think, the more we stir up feelings of anxiety, fear, or even anger. Our emotions become tied to these thoughts, and we become trapped in a cycle. For example, if you're constantly thinking about how someone may perceive you, you might feel anxious or worried, even though that person may not be thinking about you at all. The more you dwell on these thoughts, the stronger your emotions become, pulling you deeper into a spiral of negativity. But here's the good news: you don't have to let your thoughts control you. You can train your mind to recognize when you're overthinking and gently bring it back to the present moment. Through practices like mindful breathing, you can anchor yourself in the here and now, allowing the storm of thoughts to settle and your true peace to shine through. Let's consider an example. Imagine a person is constantly worried about how they look to others. They think about their appearance every time they meet someone, wondering if others are judging them. This worry causes stress, and every social interaction becomes a source of anxiety. The person begins to feel less confident, and even though others may not notice or care about their appearance, the individual is consumed by this thought. In this way, overthinking distorts our reality, making us feel inadequate or anxious even when there's no real reason to feel that way. But the Buddhist practice of non-attachment can help us break free from this cycle. Non-attachment does not mean we don't care about others or about how we present ourselves. It simply means that we don't allow our thoughts, especially those about others, to control our happiness or our peace of mind. We learn to act from a place of inner calm, rather than being driven by constant worries. Overthinking is also a form of attachment. We become attached to our thoughts, believing that we need to find answers or explanations for everything. But sometimes, there are no clear answers. The beauty of life is in its uncertainty, in its ability to unfold without us needing to know everything in advance. When we let go of the need to figure everything out, we create space for peace, for freedom, and for growth. Now, it's important to remember that the path to overcoming overthinking is not an instant fix. It's a journey. There will be times when you slip back into old habits, when your mind races with thoughts. But the key is to recognize this, to gently guide yourself back to the present moment, and to be kind to yourself when you do. In Buddhism, we are taught that all things are impermanent. Our thoughts, our emotions, even our worries, they are temporary. They come and go. By understanding this, we can detach from them, knowing that the peace we seek is always within us, waiting to be rediscovered. The more we practice mindfulness, the clearer the water of our mind becomes, until one day, we can sit in the stillness and find the peace that was always there. So, next time you find yourself caught in a storm of thoughts, remember, you have the power to calm the waves. By practicing mindfulness, letting go of attachments, and staying present, you can restore peace to your mind and experience the true joy of living without the constant weight of overthinking. Mindfulness, a path to inner clarity. Imagine you're sitting in a quiet room, your mind filled with 1,000 thoughts. You're thinking about what you need to do tomorrow, the conversation you had earlier, or maybe a worry that keeps coming back. These thoughts are like waves in the ocean, crashing one after the other, leaving you with no peace. But what if you could calm that storm? What if, instead of getting swept away by every wave, you could simply watch them come and go? This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment. It's about paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, and actions without getting caught up in them. When you are mindful, you're not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. Instead, you are grounded in the present moment, observing what's happening around you and within you with clarity and calmness. The first step to mindfulness is simply noticing. We spend most of our lives on autopilot, moving from one task to the next without truly being aware of what we're doing. We often get lost in our thoughts, especially when they're about other people. What they think of us, what they might say, how they might react. But mindfulness teaches us to pause, take a breath, and notice what's happening right now. For instance, the next time you're having a conversation, try to focus on the words being spoken, the feelings behind them, and the sensations in your body. Don't think about how you're going to respond or worry about whether the other person likes what you said. Just be there, in the moment, fully present. This simple act of being present with someone, without overthinking, can change the way you experience relationships and the world around you. When it comes to mindfulness, one of the most important aspects is observing your thoughts without judgment. Imagine your thoughts as clouds in the sky. Sometimes they may be light and fluffy, but other times they may be dark and heavy. Mindfulness teaches us to see these clouds without attaching ourselves to them. We don't need to believe every thought that comes into our mind, nor do we need to act on every emotion that arises. We can simply observe, and in doing so, we create space between ourselves and the thoughts that often control us. This practice of non-attachment is crucial to mindfulness. When we are attached to our thoughts, we become prisoners of our own mind. We let our thoughts dictate how we feel and how we act. If someone says something negative about us, for example, our mind might latch onto that thought, replaying it over and over again. We might start to feel anxious, upset, or even angry, believing that this thought defines us. But mindfulness teaches us that thoughts are not facts. They are temporary, like passing clouds in the sky. By practicing mindfulness, we can learn to let them go without getting caught up in them. One of the key benefits of mindfulness is the way it helps us deal with the stress and anxiety that often come from overthinking. When we are constantly focused on what others think of us, or what we should be doing next, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Mindfulness, however, brings us back to the present moment, where we can experience peace and clarity. By focusing on our breath, for example, we anchor ourselves in the now. This simple act of breathing can help calm our racing minds and bring us back to a state of balance. In the teachings of Buddhism, mindfulness is seen as a way to cultivate wisdom and understanding. It's not about trying to escape our thoughts, but about learning to be with them in a compassionate and non-judgmental way. When we are mindful, we see things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be or as we fear they might be. This allows us to make better decisions, to respond to situations with more clarity, and to live our lives with greater peace. It's important to remember that mindfulness is not a one-time practice. It's something we can incorporate into every aspect of our lives. You can practice mindfulness while eating, walking, or even washing dishes. The goal is not to become perfect, but to become more aware. The more you practice mindfulness, the easier it becomes to stay present and less caught up in the constant stream of thoughts. But how do we bring mindfulness into our daily lives, especially when we're surrounded by distractions? One way is to create moments of stillness throughout the day. You don't need to meditate for hours or sit in silence for long periods. Even just taking a few deep breaths when you're feeling overwhelmed can bring you back to the present. You can also use everyday activities as opportunities for mindfulness. When you're brushing your teeth, for example, focus on the sensation of the toothbrush against your teeth, the taste of the toothpaste, and the sound of the brush moving. This simple practice can help you stay present and calm, even in the busiest of moments. Another way to practice mindfulness is through guided meditation. In Buddhism, meditation is seen as a powerful tool for cultivating mindfulness and achieving inner peace. There are many different forms of meditation, but the basic principle is the same: to focus the mind and become more aware of the present moment. Guided meditation can be a great way to start if you're new to the practice. It helps you focus your attention and gently brings you back to the present whenever your mind begins to wander. As you continue to practice mindfulness, you'll notice that it becomes easier to let go of your attachments to thoughts and worries. The more present you are, the less you'll be affected by the opinions and judgments of others. You'll start to realize that your happiness and peace of mind don't depend on what other people think about you. Instead, they come from within. Mindfulness also helps us develop greater compassion for ourselves and others. When we're mindful, we're more likely to respond to situations with kindness and understanding, rather than reacting out of habit or emotion. We become more attuned to our own feelings and needs, as well as the feelings of those around us. This compassionate awareness is a key part of Buddhist practice and can help us build stronger, more meaningful connections with others. At the heart of mindfulness is the idea of acceptance. We learn to accept things as they are, without trying to change them or resist them. This doesn't mean that we have to like everything that happens, but it means that we stop fighting against reality. By accepting things as they are, we can find peace in the present moment, no matter what is happening around us. This acceptance is liberating because it frees us from the need to control everything. It allows us to be at peace with ourselves, even when things aren't perfect. In the end, mindfulness is not about perfection. It's about progress. Every time you bring your attention back to the present moment, you're cultivating mindfulness. Every time you choose to observe your thoughts without judgment, you're practicing mindfulness. And every time you let go of the need to control or overthink, you're moving closer to the clarity and peace that come from being fully present. Mindfulness is a path, the journey of self-discovery and inner peace. It takes time and patience, but with consistent practice, you can begin to experience the profound benefits it offers. So, take a deep breath, notice what's happening right now, and remember that peace is always available to you, in this moment, just as it is. Practicing detachment without apathy. To truly begin the journey of detaching from the constant noise in our minds, we must first understand that detachment does not mean apathy. It does not mean becoming indifferent or uncaring toward others. Many people fear that detachment will turn them cold or emotionally numb, but in reality, detachment is about freeing yourself from the attachment that causes unnecessary suffering. It's not about turning your back on the world or its people. It's about not letting external events control your inner peace. Think of attachment like a string. The more you attach yourself to someone or something, the tighter the string pulls, making you feel confined. Detachment is the act of cutting that string, but not in a way that hurts anyone. It simply means you are no longer bound by something outside of your control. You can still care for people, you can still love them deeply, but you are no longer ruled by their actions, thoughts, or feelings. In the Buddhist tradition, this concept is often referred to as non-attachment. It's important to realize that attachment doesn't always appear in obvious forms. It can show up as worrying about what others think of you, being overly concerned with the outcome of a situation, or clinging to past experiences that no longer serve you. All of these attachments weigh us down and prevent us from fully experiencing the present moment. Buddhist teachings guide us in understanding that attachment creates suffering. When we become too attached to a certain outcome, a person, or an idea, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Why? Because life is constantly changing. People change. Situations change. Even our own feelings and thoughts are in a constant state of flux. Trying to hold on to things that are not permanent is like trying to catch water in your hands. It slips through, and you are left with nothing but frustration. Now, let's talk about the difference between caring and being attached. Caring is an action that comes from a place of love, kindness, and compassion. It is genuine and free of expectations. When you care about someone, you wish them well, but you do not need them to behave a certain way for your own peace of mind. Detachment does not mean you stop caring about the people in your life. On the contrary, it allows you to love them without the weight of expectation. Attachment, on the other hand, is often driven by fear. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of rejection. This fear creates a sense of dependency. When you are attached, your happiness depends on another person's actions or approval. This is where we get trapped in the cycle of overthinking. Will they like me? Did I say the right thing? What if they leave me? These questions pull us further from our peace. True detachment is about developing inner strength and trust. It's about being so grounded in yourself that the actions or opinions of others don't dictate your emotional state. This doesn't mean you don't care, but rather, you have cultivated a mindset where your happiness is not tied to external validation. The more you practice detachment, the more you find a deep sense of freedom to live authentically without the constant need to seek approval. One powerful way to practice detachment without becoming apathetic is through mindfulness meditation. By sitting in stillness, observing your thoughts without judgment, you begin to separate yourself from them. You realize that thoughts are just that, thoughts. They come and go. When we get attached to them, we suffer, but when we observe them from a distance, we regain control. Imagine a river flowing gently in front of you. Thoughts are like leaves floating on that river. Some leaves may appear larger, others may look more colorful, but they all flow downstream eventually. If you try to grab onto every leaf, you'll exhaust yourself. But if you simply watch them pass, you remain calm, unaffected by their movement. This is the essence of detachment. Another way to practice detachment in your daily life is through letting go of expectations. We often attach ourselves to the idea that things should go a certain way, that people should behave a certain way, or that we should meet certain goals. But life has a natural rhythm of its own. When we release rigid expectations and embrace life as it comes, we open ourselves up to experiences that we may have missed otherwise. Take, for example, your relationships with others. When you hold on to the idea that someone must always act or speak a certain way to make you happy, you are creating a cage for both yourself and the other person. But when you let go of those expectations, you allow the relationship to breathe. You allow people to be who they are, and in return, they allow you to be who you are. The result is a deeper, more authentic connection. Let's not forget that detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about yourself. Often, we attach ourselves to our own identities, the way we see ourselves, the achievements we've made, or the roles we play. These attachments can be just as limiting as attachments to other people. We get caught up in the idea of who we think we are, and we hold on to that image tightly. But true peace comes when we let go of that image and embrace ourselves as we are in this moment, imperfect, changing, and free. It's important to remember that practicing detachment doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, like learning to swim. At first, you may feel uncertain or uncomfortable, but with time, the water begins to feel natural. The key is to be patient with yourself. Detachment is not about forcing yourself to stop caring. It's about creating space for yourself to care without getting lost in the attachment. When you practice detachment, you create a kind of mental space that allows you to see things more clearly. You no longer react to situations out of fear, guilt, or shame. Instead, you respond with wisdom, understanding that everything is temporary, and that your happiness comes from within, not from external sources. Finally, remember that detachment is not a form of escape. It is not about avoiding challenges or shutting off emotions. It is about living fully and freely, with a heart open to the world, but not held captive by it. When you learn to let go of unnecessary attachments, you will find that life becomes lighter, simpler, and more joyful. You can be present in each moment without the weight of the past or the worry about the future. Detachment allows you to experience life more deeply because you are no longer bound by expectations. You will find a kind of freedom that allows you to love more genuinely, live more peacefully, and be more content with who you are. This is the essence of living in harmony with yourself and the world around you. The middle way, balance between connection and letting go. In life, we often feel torn between two extremes. We either care too much about others or we push everyone away, seeking complete detachment. Both of these extremes cause suffering. It's like walking on a tightrope, where one side is the overwhelming urge to cling to people and situations, and the other is the desire to withdraw completely. The secret lies in finding a middle ground, a balanced path, the middle way. The middle way is a central concept in Buddhism. It teaches us to live without clinging too tightly to anything, but also without completely disconnecting from the world and the people around us. It's about finding peace in the balance between attachment and detachment, between being present with others and not letting their opinions define us. Imagine you are walking through a forest, surrounded by beautiful trees, birds, and the sounds of nature. If you focus too much on one tree, you miss the beauty of the entire forest. Similarly, if you become too attached to one person or one situation, you lose sight of the bigger picture. Life, just like the forest, is made up of many experiences, many people, and many moments. If we hold on too tightly to one, we miss the opportunity to experience the richness of everything else. At the same time, it is not healthy to become completely detached from everyone. Some might think that to avoid overthinking or attachment, we should shut ourselves off from all relationships, stop caring about anyone, and live in complete isolation. But this is not the way either. Complete detachment can make us cold, distant, and disconnected from the very essence of life. Relationships and connections are what bring meaning to our existence. The middle way teaches us that we need to be present with others, but without letting their words or actions disturb our inner peace. One of the first steps in practicing the middle way is to recognize when we are becoming too attached. Are we constantly seeking validation from others? Do we find ourselves wrapped up in what people think of us? Or do we find ourselves putting the needs and opinions of others above our own well-being? If the answer is yes, then it's time to step back and reflect. The middle way asks us to practice being with others without losing ourselves in their expectations. The middle way also encourages us to let go of the need to control everything. When we hold on tightly to people, situations, or outcomes, we create tension. It's like holding a rope that is tied to a moving object. The more tightly we hold on, the more we struggle, and the more we feel pain. But when we learn to let go, to release the tension, we find peace. In our relationships, we can be connected to others without becoming entangled in their emotions or behaviors. For instance, you might have a friend who is going through a tough time. You care about them and want to be there for them, but if you get too wrapped up in their problems, you might lose your own balance. The middle way teaches us to offer support without taking on the emotional burden. We can listen, show compassion, and offer help, but we must also know where to draw the line so that we don't lose our inner peace. Think about the concept of boundaries. Healthy boundaries are not walls that isolate us. They are more like clear lines that define where we end and another person begins. These boundaries help us maintain a sense of self while still being compassionate and connected to others. Without boundaries, we risk losing ourselves in the lives of others, while too rigid boundaries can leave us feeling isolated and disconnected. The middle way teaches us to be flexible with our boundaries, to allow space for connection without allowing ourselves to be consumed. Another important aspect of the middle way is recognizing that we can love and care for others without depending on them for our happiness. In many of our relationships, we tend to believe that our happiness is tied to the other person's actions or approval. But when we rely on someone else to make us happy, we give away our power. The middle way encourages us to find happiness within ourselves, to nurture our own peace, and then share that peace with others. This way, we are not dependent on anyone or anything for our sense of well-being. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness can help us stay centered in the present moment, allowing us to connect with others in a healthy way. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our thoughts without judgment, to be aware of how we are feeling, and to notice when we are becoming overly attached or disconnected. When we practice mindfulness, we can catch ourselves before we start spiraling into overthinking or detaching too much. It allows us to maintain balance and stay connected without losing ourselves in the process. When we find the middle way, we realize that we don't have to choose between caring deeply for others and maintaining our peace. We can do both. We can love deeply, but without clinging. We can help others, but without sacrificing our own needs. The middle way teaches us that we can be present in the world, engage with the people around us, but not overwhelmed by them. We don't have to give up connection to protect our peace. Instead, we can find harmony between the two. This balance also extends to how we view ourselves. We don't need to seek constant approval or validation from others. When we stop depending on others' opinions to define our worth, we free ourselves from the constant need to please everyone. The middle way shows us that we are enough just as we are, and we can let go of the need for external validation. As we move through life, we are constantly presented with opportunities to practice the middle way. Whether it's with family, friends, co-workers, or even strangers, we can learn to engage with others in a way that is balanced, healthy, and peaceful. Instead of becoming consumed by others' emotions or expectations, we can choose to respond with clarity, compassion, and mindfulness. Ultimately, the middle way is not about perfection. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. It's about being present in our relationships without losing ourselves in them. It's about caring for others without sacrificing our inner peace. When we practice the middle way, we find that we can live harmoniously in the world without being overwhelmed by it. How to recognize and break the cycle of overthinking. Overthinking, like a never-ending cycle, traps us in its grip, often without us even realizing it. It begins with a small thought, perhaps something someone said, a mistake we made, or even an uncertain feeling. At first, it's just a flicker in our mind, but soon, it turns into a wildfire, consuming our attention, shaping our emotions, and clouding our judgment. This is how the cycle of overthinking begins, and before we know it, we find ourselves replaying scenarios over and over again, each time digging ourselves deeper into confusion, stress, or self-doubt. Recognizing the moment when overthinking takes hold is the first step in breaking the cycle. But how do we do that? The first clue comes when we feel a sense of unease or anxiety starting to build up. Maybe our heart races a little, or we feel that nagging tension in our chest. These physical sensations are often the early warning signs that our mind is starting to spiral. It's important to notice them, not just as physical discomforts, but as signals to pause and take a step back. The second step is identifying the thought or trigger that started this cycle. Often, we get so caught up in the swirl of thoughts that we forget how it all started. Maybe someone made a comment that bothered us. Or perhaps we're worried about a future event that we have no control over. When we trace back the roots of our overthinking, we can more easily separate ourselves from it. It's just a thought, not reality. One of the most effective ways to break the cycle of overthinking is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment, not allowing our minds to drift into the past or future. Imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet room, and your mind begins to race. You start to think about that conversation you had earlier and wonder if you said something wrong. You might even feel anxious about how the other person perceived you. In this moment, instead of letting your mind wander, you take a deep breath and focus on what's around you. Feel the chair you're sitting on. Notice the sounds in the room. Feel the air on your skin. By engaging your senses in the present moment, you disrupt the cycle of overthinking. Another powerful technique is the practice of labeling thoughts. When a negative or unproductive thought comes up, try saying to yourself, "This is just a thought, not the truth." You can even give the thought a label, like judgment or worry. By naming the thought, you give it less power. It becomes something you can observe from a distance, instead of something that consumes you. It's a simple shift, but it makes a world of difference in how you relate to your thoughts. The third step is to create space for your thoughts. Sometimes, we overthink because we feel rushed to make decisions or take action. This pressure adds fuel to the fire. Instead of forcing yourself to act immediately, take a moment to step back. Ask yourself, do I need to make a decision right now, or can I give myself time to think it through? Often, giving yourself permission to pause is all you need to break free from the grip of overthinking. Sometimes, overthinking arises from our desire to control everything around us. We think if we keep worrying, we can prevent bad things from happening or make everything turn out perfectly. But life doesn't work like that. No matter how much we think about something, we cannot control every outcome. A powerful insight from Buddhist teachings is the realization that much of our suffering comes from our attachment to control. We hold on to our thoughts, believing they can change reality. But in truth, our thoughts are just fleeting events in our mind. The more we attach to them, the more we suffer. So how can we let go of this need for control? One way is to practice acceptance. Instead of constantly analyzing and trying to fix everything, we can begin to accept things as they are. This doesn't mean we give up on improving ourselves or our circumstances. It simply means that we stop fighting with reality. We stop trying to control every thought or outcome. And in this acceptance, we find peace. Another key element in breaking the cycle of overthinking is learning to trust ourselves. Often, overthinking arises because we lack confidence in our decisions. We question every move we make, doubting our judgment. But remember, each decision, whether it's small or large, is a chance to learn and grow. Trust that you are capable of making choices that align with your values and goals. Even if things don't turn out perfectly, that's okay. You can always course-correct and learn along the way. Trusting yourself is an act of self-compassion, and it's crucial in overcoming the tendency to overthink. Finally, remember that the present moment is where life happens. Overthinking often takes us away from the here and now, pulling us into the past or future. But in reality, all we ever have is the present. So when you catch yourself overthinking, ask yourself, what is happening right now? What can I experience in this moment? By returning to the present, you shift your focus away from unnecessary worries and return to the simplicity of being. Breaking the cycle of overthinking isn't easy, and it won't happen overnight. But with patience and consistent practice, you can start to shift your relationship with your thoughts. Remember that thoughts are just thoughts. They come and go. They don't define you. By recognizing, labeling, and accepting them, you create the space for peace and clarity to enter your mind. In the end, it's not about stopping all thoughts, but about learning how to not be controlled by them. Practical exercises to cultivate mental freedom. When we talk about mental freedom, we're not talking about ignoring the world around us or pretending that we don't care. No, true mental freedom comes from the ability to accept things as they are, without letting them control our minds. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of overthinking, worrying, and constantly seeking validation from others. This freedom, while not easy to achieve, is possible, and it begins with simple, everyday practices that you can start right now. One of the most effective exercises to cultivate mental freedom is mindful breathing. We often overlook how much our breath is connected to our mental state. When we're anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, our breathing becomes shallow and quick. When we're calm and at peace, our breath slows down and becomes deeper. By paying attention to your breath, you can begin to bring awareness to the present moment and free yourself from the mental clutter. Here's a simple exercise to try. Sit comfortably in a quiet space, keeping your back straight but relaxed. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs with air. Hold your breath for a few seconds, then slowly exhale through your mouth, letting go of any tension in your body. Repeat this cycle for 5 to 10 minutes, focusing only on your breath and bringing your mind back each time it wanders. This simple exercise helps anchor you in the present moment, allowing you to step away from the constant chatter of your mind. Over time, it will become easier to let go of unnecessary thoughts and connect with your inner calm. Another practice you can adopt is daily reflection. Before you go to bed, take a few minutes to reflect on your day. Think about the moments when you felt overwhelmed by thoughts, especially thoughts about others. Acknowledge them without judgment. Ask yourself, why did I let this affect me? What could I have done differently? This kind of reflection doesn't mean you're criticizing yourself. It's an opportunity to understand your triggers and learn from them. Start with just 5 minutes a day. Sit in a comfortable position, close your eyes, and replay the events of the day in your mind. Focus on how you felt, why you felt that way, and what you can learn from those feelings. The goal here is to become more self-aware, not to judge yourself, but to gently guide your mind toward a place of understanding and growth. Journaling is another powerful tool for releasing mental stress and achieving clarity. Writing down your thoughts can help you process emotions and untangle the confusion in your mind. When you put your feelings on paper, you're able to separate yourself from them and see them from a new perspective. Try this. Every morning or evening, spend 10 minutes writing in a journal. Let your thoughts flow freely onto the pages without any judgment. Don't worry about grammar, punctuation, or structure. Just write. You'll be surprised at how much mental weight is lifted when you get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. At first, it might feel like your thoughts are all over the place. That's perfectly fine. With time, you'll begin to notice patterns in your thinking. The things you constantly worry about, the stories you tell yourself, the fears that hold you back. By recognizing these patterns, you can slowly start to shift your mindset and free yourself from these repetitive thoughts. Gratitude practice is another way to shift your focus from what's wrong or what's missing in your life to what's already good. Often, we get caught in overthinking because we focus too much on what we don't have or what others think of us. By cultivating gratitude, we train our minds to notice and appreciate the blessings already present in our lives. This simple shift can help reduce the mental clutter and bring more peace into your day. To begin, every morning or evening, write down 3 things you're grateful for. They can be big or small, a kind word from a friend, a delicious meal, or even a moment of quiet. The key is to consistently remind yourself of what's going right in your life, instead of getting lost in what's going wrong. A more advanced exercise involves embracing silence. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with noise, from our phones, social media, work, and even our own thoughts. We fill every gap with distractions. But silence is a powerful tool for mental clarity. By embracing silence, we create space for stillness and introspection. Here's how you can begin. Set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day to be completely silent. No phone, no talking, no background music. Just sit quietly in your space. Close your eyes and pay attention to the sounds around you. The hum of the air conditioner, the chirping of birds outside, or even the sound of your own breath. Allow yourself to simply be. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, but over time, you'll discover that silence has a calming effect on the mind. Letting go of control is another powerful exercise. We often overthink because we try to control everything around us, how others perceive us, how things turn out, and even how we feel. But the reality is that we can't control everything. We can't control the weather, the actions of others, or the past. The only thing we can control is how we respond to what happens. A helpful exercise to practice letting go is to write down something you're trying to control, but can't. It could be a situation, a relationship, or an outcome that's beyond your influence. Acknowledge that it's not in your control and, with that awareness, consciously release it. Imagine you're holding that thought or worry in your hands, and then, one by one, let it go, as if you're opening your hands and allowing it to float away. This simple act can bring an immediate sense of relief and freedom. Lastly, engage in acts of kindness. Sometimes, overthinking happens when we turn our focus inward too much. We start to obsess over our own thoughts, insecurities, and worries. A simple antidote to this is to focus on others, to offer kindness and support without expecting anything in return. Acts of kindness not only help others, but they also bring a sense of joy and fulfillment to our own hearts, reducing the mental chatter that consumes us. Start small. Smile at a stranger, help a friend, or volunteer your time. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Even small acts can have a big impact on both your mental state and the world around you. By consistently practicing these exercises, you'll begin to shift your relationship with your thoughts. Instead of being overwhelmed by them, you'll gain the ability to observe them from a place of calm. Over time, these practices will help you develop mental freedom, allowing you to live a more peaceful, focused, and joyful life. The key is patience and consistency. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to let go of unnecessary thoughts and embrace the present moment with clarity and calmness. Conclusion: transform your mindset and embrace serenity. Dear seeker, you've journeyed far and deep with us. We started by asking, why do we overthink? Why do we hold on to others' thoughts and actions so tightly? And now, as we come to the end of this exploration, I invite you to reflect on all you've learned. Life, at its core, is a flowing river. Yet, many of us stand at the edge, trying to control its course, grabbing onto every ripple and wave. Overthinking about others, holding on to their opinions or actions, is like clinging to water. No matter how tight your grip, it slips through. You exhaust yourself, while the river continues on its way, unaffected. The wisdom of Buddhism reminds us that letting go isn't about indifference. It's not about turning away from the people or situations in your life. Instead, it's about releasing the unnecessary weight you carry, the judgments, the expectations, and the endless mental chatter. Think of it this way. If someone gives you a heavy bag and you keep carrying it for miles, whose choice is that? The bag is theirs, but the burden you feel is yours. So why not put it down? As we conclude, let me share with you a simple but powerful Zen practice to carry with you always. Pause and breathe. When you feel your thoughts spiraling about someone else, stop, take a deep breath in, hold it for a moment, and release it slowly. This breath is your anchor to the present. Ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Most of the time, overthinking leads nowhere. Recognize when your thoughts are recycling the same worries, and remind yourself to let them pass. Come back to now. Whatever happened with others, the unkind word, the ignored message, the criticism, it belongs to the past. The future hasn't arrived. All you truly have is this moment. Be here. Remember, the more you think about others, the less time you spend understanding yourself. Your peace, your joy, your serenity, they are within you, not in the hands of anyone else. It's not easy, I know. Letting go of overthinking takes practice. Some days will be harder than others. But every step you take toward this freedom is a step toward a life of balance and peace. Now, let me leave you with this final thought. Imagine yourself as a bird. If you carry too much weight, you cannot fly. The sky is vast, open, waiting for you to soar. But it's only when you release what's unnecessary that you can rise above the clouds. Before we part, I ask you this. Have you found value in these teachings? Have they opened your heart and mind? If they have, I invite you to support our work. There are so many views on this channel, yet only 0.2% of viewers subscribe. So please, like this video, share it with those who need it, and subscribe to Wisdom Woven to stay connected to this journey of mindfulness and growth. As a Zen master, my words to you are simple. Seek not to control the thoughts of others, but to master your own. In doing so, you will find the true path to serenity. Thank you for walking this path with us. May you find peace in every step you take, and may your mind rest as lightly as a leaf on a still pond.